Yes.
I
All
figure
right.
if I just keep, it's like how I do this is like with music. If you just fumble around enough, eventually it works.
Okay, then it changed to reaction. So what happened with the record part, or is it just recording? Oh, it is
It
recording.
says
All
it's
right.
recording right now.
Great. Okay,
Okay, I'll take a
cool.
quick sip of my caffeine and then we'll be good.
All right. And I will say, I noticed that you had a dog trying to get into your room. And so I'm loving that because I have 3 big dogs at my house.
Oh, you do? Yeah, we have two dogs and a cat. What kind of dogs do you have?
I have Great Pyrenees and 2 Huskies.
Oh, wow. Great Pyrenees are huge.
Yeah, well, he's mixed, so he's about 50 pounds less than he would be if he was full-blooded. So, but yeah, so if you hear anybody bark or a squeaky toy go off, you'll know what's going down.
Well, then I feel better. At our house, it's kind of post-dinner, people walking around town, and we live on the way up to a nice park. And so people walk by, and our dogs like to make sure that everybody knows that they are in charge of our house. So,
they're doing the job.
Yeah, my husband's out there trying to calm them.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's get started officially. And I know Jason is going to edit these a little bit for us too. So
Great.
if
Hi,
anything
Jason.
is goofy, he'll fix it for us, or so he
Cool.
promises me.
Good.
All right. Well, let's get started.
Tell him I'd like to be taller and thinner, please.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Where are you from, and a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I feel like I'm always answering for more than just me. So
Oh, that's fine.
the band, Avey Grouws Band, is really out of the Quad Cities, out of Bettendorf. And that's where we all met. So all the rest of my band members are all from the Quad Cities. But I actually live 3 hours north, up in northeast Iowa, in Decorah, which is a tiny little town. Yeah, beautiful little town, but tiny little town in the northeast corner, very near Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up moving. So my dad was in radio, and we lived in Wisconsin and in Iowa and in North Dakota, in Fargo. And so we moved a bit. But after I went to University of Iowa for college, and after college, my husband and I moved out to LA. And many years later, after a couple of kids, we decided it was time to come back to the Midwest. So I've been back in the Midwest for 16 years now.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
So how long have you been performing?
That probably has multiple answers too. I mean, Avey Grouws Band has been together since officially January 1st of 2017. That's when we officially formed as a band and became Avey Grouws Band. But I've been, I think most people that really enjoy music and performing in some way, shape, or form found a way to do music. And so I definitely did it in school, and even did a stint after high school with a group called Up With People.
I remember that.
I did the swing clap. No, we didn't do swing claps. I was a much older. I was a more recent group, but yeah, Up With People was really cool, and I have to thank Up With People. I know we joke about it a lot, but I have to give Up With People full credit because I think what people don't realize is that it's non-religious, non-governmental, non-political. It's really trying to bring people together from all across the globe, and I learned a lot about the pros and cons of being an American. By spending time having really difficult conversations with people from all across the world who didn't necessarily think that the way that I thought things were supposed to be growing up in the Midwest were always, they weren't always looked well upon by some of the folks that I got to learn. And I learned not only how to have really good conversations and open my eyes and ears up to what other people have to offer, but I also learned how to really use my voice. And I give full credit to Up With People for that. So as corny as it is, I did learn a lot.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. I think that might be the first interview I've told anybody that I was in Up With People in. So there you go.
Well, I'm excited because I'm a girl of the 70s. And so that was like a big thing back then.
Yeah,
cool.
Totally.
All right. How did you get into music then?
Well, it's funny because I was going through some things, now that we've had time to clean out some areas of our house that we haven't looked at in 16 years.
Yeah.
Going through a closet, and I found a thing from kindergarten that I think my husband or my mom, I can't remember, had framed once. And it was one of those like kind of the early carbon copies of a sheet that they gave us in school in kindergarten. And it said, "My name is Jenny. I am 5 years old. I have one sister and no brothers." And it said, "When I grow up, I want to sing." So I think I knew it was something I loved from very early on. But it's not a super responsible way to live. And so I've spent most of my adult life working, well, it's all work. Isn't that the funny mind game? It's all work, but I worked in jobs that were maybe seen as more traditional. So for the last 16 years, I was running a radio station here in Decorah, and was good at it. I enjoyed it. I love working with our clients here in town and in the area, and I loved being able to run a really cool radio station. But it was because of radio that I ended up going to a blues jam in the Quad Cities. And at the blues jam, I had a band here locally. There's some really great friends of mine, and we had a band that performed mainly right here. We did covers mostly, and we had a lot of fun. And we had a great following here, and I think that sort of whet the appetite. But it was really going to this blues jam and getting brave enough to jump up on stage with these guys and finding that there was something that called to me that I hadn't had a chance to explore, that really gave me the opportunity. So, and it was the guys that are in the band. So that's how we became a band too, is by meeting at that blues jam.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I think sometimes the world, I never stopped doing music. I wrote, had a huge breakdown when my 3 children were all very young, and was working 13 hours a day at the radio station, and had 3 young children, all under 4.5. And life was very stressful, and I ended up going to the therapist, and the therapist eventually got to the point where he said, "I think you need to write." And even he saw what I didn't, so he encouraged me to write, and I ended up doing an EP thanks to therapy. But that's, there's all those little things, you just never know what is going to be the one thing that maybe pushes you. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest, I probably wouldn't have jumped full-time even into this band, except that last September, our radio station was sold, and I had to make a decision. Was I going to stay on with the new folks and change the way that I had worked and adapt, or was I going to go full-time into music? And at that point, things were looking positive for the band, and I made the jump, and it's been the best decision I ever made.
Excellent.
Yep.
So pre-pandemic, what was your life as a musician like? Because we talked about this the other night. It's pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, really.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. My oldest daughter was born 5 days before 9/11, and we were living in Los Angeles at the time, and we talk about pre 9/11, post 9/11, right, because it absolutely relates to the world that we knew, and then now the world my children have only known. And so absolutely the pandemic is going to be another sort of waterline, right? Exactly. Another line that we follow. And I would say pre-pandemic, who would have ever thought that this was going to be the way it is? None of us could have really imagined this. And so up until September, we were doing, 200 gigs a year, and I was working full time. I don't know. It was a really difficult thing. Luckily, my daughters are all in high school now, but it was really crazy. I mean, it was intense. And so I knew something had to change. I couldn't keep up with that schedule. And so, so when I left my job in September, music, I'm a worker. I love working. I work hard. I work all the time. And so music became the full-time job. And so my days pre-pandemic were really spent either prepping for gigs, setting up gigs, booking gigs, promoting them online, making sure they're getting entered. And we had just gone into the studio last October to record our debut album. And so pre-pandemic, it was a lot of focus on the album. And it's interesting you asked that question right now, because our album, The Devil May Care, was set to release. We had set a national release date with our publicist for March 20th, 2020. And March 13th was our last, March 14th technically as the duo, but that was our last show, because after that we went into social isolation, and so did the state and most of the country, right? And so well, the world for that matter.
Yeah,
And we
right.
never got to do our release party in person. We did it with 3 of us in the band, not the full band, online. And so pre-pandemic, it was work toward this album. And then all of a sudden, literally the pandemic hit when our album was hitting. And so post-pandemic has been really strange, because our album instantly got wonderful reviews internationally, and it hit the Billboard charts, which I'm not sure a lot of Iowa bands get to say ever, which is a pretty exciting thing. I used to feel weird about being proud about something, but I think if everyone would just allow us this one thing, I'm really proud of it. So we
I'll allow it.
yeah, we hit number 13, and then the second week went up to number 10 on the Billboard Blues album chart. That's a huge feat, and we did it in the midst of the pandemic, and that is crazy, but is frustrating because we can't tour right now to support the album. So it's we were all leading up to this, and now it was kind of like, we're here. Oh, we can't do it. And we understand. We get it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So how are you currently dealing with, I mean, so you can't do everything you were doing before. What kind of things are you doing?
Well, you do everything you can. And like I said, I'm a worker. So I think I've made my family slightly crazy, because I still work. I mean, it's what I do. This is my job. And so I'm committed to making sure that we do the best we can with what we have. I think it's been really important to us and kind of eye-opening. I think Chris Avey, the other co-lead of the band, Avey Grouws band, Chris Avey said one day, he said, the great thing that happened because of this pandemic, which sounds like a terrible thing to say, but I think we all understand that good things can still come out of negative situations, that the great thing to come out of this is the fact that we have really begun to understand the power of connecting remotely with we call them our friends. Fans sounds weird. With our friends, because they've needed this music as much as we have right now. We've needed them and they've needed us, and we hear from it over and over again. So one of the things we've really spent time doing is twice a week, 3 of us. So there can be 4 or 5 of us in the band, but we have chosen some social distancing kind of structures right now. And that included just 3 of us getting together most of this 2 months. And so because of that, 3 of us have gone live every Friday at 6 p.m. and every Sunday at noon for an hour and a half since so I guess, what is that, the 20th, since our release party on March 20th. So every single weekend, minus one weekend when Chris Avey had emergency eye surgery for a detached retina. Other than that one weekend, we have been on every single weekend, and we find that is really important in terms of making sure that we stay connected with the people that want to know what we're up to, and that in return, we get to get a little bit of that feedback that keeps us going. Plus, it's a good chance to write new music, right?
Right. Well, and I was going to ask if you were performing online, so that's great. And so it sounds like it's working out well for you. So it sounds like your fans have been there for you. And are you surprised by that, or
why did that just make that literally just made me emotional? It's kind of a funny thing. They have been there for us in a way. I mean, so just today I got a little care package in the mail. People that we've met like once or twice ever are sending us packages to make sure we're okay. Someone sent me 3 face masks for me and the guys to make sure that she sewed them for us, along with a really cute card and a $50 gas card. Like, we didn't go online and say, hey, here we're struggling, but I think people are aware that were struggling. So, I mean, when you use this as a job, as your full-time job, you become very used to making the budget work with your family, and you make choices together, right? This pandemic has really thrown that. And so the fact that people have been as generous as they have been is really heartening. And I think even more than financial, which don't get me wrong, that financial contribution means a ton. But we also know that there are people that jump on our streams and don't tip. And that's okay, because I don't know what their situation is either. They may be in a tricky situation too. And and the most important thing we have found is that it's not about whether or not somebody tips. It's really about whether or not someone is encouraged by whatever we just put out there that day. We're kind of silly people. We goof around a lot. So I think people enjoy the humor, even though sometimes it gets a little raunchy. But I mean, I'm in a band of guys. That's what happens. But I think most importantly is that those people that you would call fans have really become friends, and we feel lucky. I hate to use the word honored because it sounds so. I feel honored, but I do feel honored. That's the truth. I do feel honored that they let us into their homes twice a week and into their backyard patios, and they blare us out of their speakers, and they dance with us, and they have fun with us, and they send us videos. I got one today of somebody's kid singing one of our songs, which she probably shouldn't have been singing because it's called 2 Days Off and a Little Bit of Liquor. But like, I mean, life is funny and it's hard right now. And I think sometimes we forget that even in the midst of really difficult times, we still need to laugh, and we still need to connect, and we still need to engage. And so, yeah, I feel really grateful.
Exactly. Awesome. Do you have any advice for other musicians trying to navigate these times?
Yeah. I'm bad at advice, in part. Not that I don't have advice to give, but I'm very cautious because I think everybody's situation is different, and the advice I give may seem silly to someone that has a far different situation. So I think the only advice I could give is to be true to the things you need and be patient with yourself in the process, and be patient with others in the process, because it's not an easy time. And the only way you get through really tough times is by remembering that the tough time is going to end. So with that in mind, how do you keep going forward? In the middle of this, I had someone who's been very supportive of I think just me personally, but later became supportive of the band. And 3 years ago, he was diagnosed with lung cancer, and he's, a young guy, a biker, avid biker, never smoked, just was like the epitome of health. And last Friday night, he passed away. And I thought about all of the things that he had spent his last 3 years doing, like reminding people to be kind to each other, reminding people why it's important to take care of our planet, reminding each other why music is important, reminding each other that we love each other. I mean, I thought, this man knew that he had a sentence because it was inoperable. He knew he only had a certain amount of time. And he chose to spend that time trying to share love and kindness and humor with other people. And frankly, we're going to get through this. And if we can remember to do it with an open heart and a lot of kindness, I think we'll get pretty far.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What do you wish somebody would have told you?
About being a musician? That nobody's going to do it for you. I mean, I think I waited. Well, no, actually, okay, there's two things.
Okay.
I wish someone had told me that no one's going to do it for you. And I wish someone else had told me, hey, Jenny, it's okay to want to do something you're dreaming about. It's okay. Like, I wish someone had said that, because I think I spent my whole life knowing that music was what I wanted to do, knowing that deep in my heart it was what I was best at doing, and yet it didn't seem responsible, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but who gives the notion of what's responsible? I have found that during this crisis, people have needed our music more than I ever thought they would. So maybe what I'm doing is helping, and maybe that's Pollyanna of me to think, but according to the people that send us messages saying, thank you, I had the worst day. My mother was diagnosed with COVID or whatever was going on, but you pulled me out today. I needed something like this. And I thought, okay, there are powerful things out there, and it isn't. I am so glad that we have bankers, and I'm so glad that we have doctors, and I'm so glad that we have attorneys. I would have been terrible at every single one of those jobs.
Mhm.
So maybe it was okay to do the
Yeah.
thing that I knew I was going to be good at, and be okay with maybe disappointing a few people in the process. But yeah, if you're feeling it, you're feeling it.
There you go.
Yeah.
So on that note, do you see music as being a vehicle for change?
Sorry. Now you saw my kids. Now you saw my kids' physics books. There you go. Is music a vehicle for change? Was that your
Yeah.
question?
Yeah. Do you
Oh,
see that? Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
and have you seen that already, or could you name me a way that you've seen that?
I think music has always been a vehicle for change. I mean, we could go back as far as music goes, which is probably pre-language, right? I mean, I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure we were humming stuff before we knew what words to say. Um, I mean, music in some ways is the thing that drives us all. You don't have to be musically inclined to be moved by music. There's a reason movies are made better by a soundtrack.
Yeah,
There's a reason that,
absolutely.
right? I mean,
Right.
imagine if you are seeing your child come home from college, or your friend who you haven't seen come home from college, and you're seeing them across the parking lot and you're walking toward them and this great orchestra swells. I mean, it doesn't happen in real life, but that would be amazing. So there's a reason they put it in movies, because it really does affect the deepest parts of us, and it connects us. And music has a couple of ways. One is what we hear, right? The actual sound and words. The words
Mhm.
themselves can move us to action, can move us to just feeling understood, which is such an important feeling. Um, Music, just those words can do that, but the sound alone can also do that. The way the chords hit, the way that a certain note strikes when you get those little goose pimples
Oh,
and you
yeah.
can feel it.
Mhm.
Why did that happen? Because something special happened. But on top of that, music is an agent of change in the way that it brings people together. And even in the pandemic, even in these physically distant times, we're still finding ways to be socially together, and music has been a big part of that right now, especially for us. So yeah, I think music has been an agent for change from it since the beginning, for many ways, and for many reasons, and in many ways. um, as far as it goes for me, I mean, I just the I probably can't even count how many songs I felt like when I heard them as a middle school kid
Mhm.
touched me in a way that I thought that writer knew my life. Like, and
Exactly.
yeah, I think
Mhm.
feeling understood, that you're not alone. As an adult, we think it's ridiculous to be, often we do, to have those feelings we used to have in middle school, when I think he looked at me, but I don't know if he did. And I don't know if she likes me, or, I heard boys saying this all the time too. And some of my girlfriends who were like, I kind of dig that person. But when you hear it in a song, you realize you're not alone. But honestly, as adults, we still have those feelings. They're in different ways, and they might be more fully formed.
Exactly.
We still want people to accept us and love us. And so, um, and we want people to be fighting for us too. We have a song that we put on the new album, that we put a video up on YouTube, called Rise Up. And we put a video out on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, just before the album came out, so 2 months before.
Uh-huh.
And it was the reason we brought it up and put it up on YouTube on Martin Luther King Jr. Day is because it was written inspired by the words of Dr. King and also Greta Thunberg, who had been writing a lot about the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And it just made me realize, as I was listening to people online and in my real life pre-pandemic argue and bicker and fight and tear each other down and mock each other and share memes that were not helpful. It didn't matter. I'm not saying what you have to believe or not believe. I'm just saying, I have told my kids, I'm shaking my finger because my mom moment's coming out. I have told my kids since they were little, if you want your sister to loan you that shirt or to use your room or whatever it might be, what are which way do you think is going to work the best? If you walk in and say, you're a jerk, now let me borrow your phone. Is she going to go, oh, you're right, I should give you my phone? No. If the other way is if you walk in and say, hey, can I talk to you? I have this thing coming up and I'd really like to borrow this sweater and maybe we could make some agreement. Which one are they more likely to say yes to? I feel like as adults, we're so dumb sometimes. We forget that the same lessons we teach our children, we should be reenacting ourselves in our everyday lives. Have a decent conversation. Know that you're not always going to agree. And in fact, that's what this song came about, because we're not going to always agree. That's human nature. We're never going to agree. In fact, even some of us in the same camps can't come to agreement on what is right or wrong in terms of handling something. The only thing I know is that if we're going to get past any of this and go to any place of growth as a nation and as a globe, is if we decide to rise up and do it in love. And so we put the song together, Rise Up, inspired by Dr. King's words, and hoping that people hear it and feel moved to remember that the only way to do this is when we do it together and we do it with a feeling of love and respect for each other. That was a very long answer. I'm sorry.
Oh, I love that though. What do you think post-pandemic life for musicians will be like?
It's gonna be hard. Yeah, I think it's gonna be hard. It's hard for a few reasons, and some of them are tricky. And I'm such a diplomat when it comes to words, so I'm cautious. But I will say the honest truth is, music isn't going to come back as quickly as everything else, and potentially rightly so. I mean, we want people to be healthy, right? But it's going to come back. It will, but it's just going to take a while. And the problem is, when it's your full-time job, when it's the way, this phone is sitting on physics books because one daughter's graduating high school next weekend from home. One
right?
daughter is a junior and she'll be a senior next year. And she's trying to get, she's got to take she just took her 5 AP exams, and she's got to take her SAT and ACT and all that stuff. And you got to pay for it. Plus I got to feed them. There's still a life that has to be lived. We have to pay for the home we live in. And so there's some tricky stuff ahead. Not all musicians were able to get money through their state unemployment, even though it's supposed to happen. So there are some folks really struggling. Not everybody was able to get grants. And we're so grateful for the help that we got from this one. I mean, it is tricky, and I don't want to sugarcoat it, because there are days when I don't look quite this happy. Like, there are days when it's really tough. But I also think that we have to be careful about wanting to go back too quickly, because if we go back too quickly, we have the potential to set ourselves back so far back by potential. I mean, there have been conversations about maybe having to shut down music, in large groups until, next summer, a whole year from now, if we don't get control of this now.
For me.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. It's hard because we do need to make a living, but those of us that make a living as a musician at a certain level know that if we go back too early, it ruins the potential for us to keep doing this long term in the future. So we're trying to play the long game a little bit. But yeah, my stomach is in knots. I talk about it every day with my family, and they're probably tired of hearing it. When do we go back? We've got some shows that they say they're not canceling in July and August. but are they going to have to cancel them? And what if they don't cancel them? Do we feel comfortable going back yet when the rates are still on the rise right now? And are we going to know what's going to happen? I'm not a doctor. I'm not an epidemiologist. I don't know I'm only can go by the information of people that are far wiser and smarter than me. And that's not Facebook memes. So I don't know. Right. Yeah, that's not a good answer. I know. I think I just.
Oh, I just lost your. I lost your audio there.
Can you?
Oh, there. It kind of sounds like a bubbled a little bit. Can you still hear me? Okay, now I just see your lips moving. Oh, that's better. Oh, no, it's crazy. Well, this is just the day of rotten internet for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, my last question was, where can people find out more about you? But I'm not sure that that's going to come across here. Let me try. I don't know if I can do. I don't hear anything. Oh, there. No, it's like fading in and out. So. What's that? Okay. Okay.
Chat. Let's see. This. Can you see that I you?
I see. It says see this, but now the screen's frozen.
This and
we'll save this and we'll connect again. That sounds great. That sounds great. Even, oh, there we go. Okay.
So I'll connect.
All right, sounds great. And even if we have to finish it Saturday.
Okay.
Okay. It's been great to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I can't wait to meet you on Saturday.
Thanks.
Okay.